The Battle of Chapultepec, a defining moment in the Mexican-American War. Introduction. The Battle of Chapultepec, fought on September 12 to 13, 1847, was a pivotal engagement in the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. This conflict, which arose from territorial disputes between the United States and Mexico, culminated in a series of battles that would ultimately shape the future of North America. The Battle of Chapultepec, in particular, stands out as a defining moment in the war, not only for its strategic importance but also for the bravery and sacrifice displayed by both sides. This article delves into the historical context, the events leading up to the battle itself, and its aftermath, providing a comprehensive understanding of this significant event. Historical context. The Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War was a conflict between the United States and Mexico that lasted from 1846 to 1848. The war was primarily driven by the United States' desire to expand its territory, particularly in the Southwest, which was then part of Mexico. The annexation of Texas by the United States in 1845 was a major point of contention, as Mexico still considered Texas a part of its territory. The war officially began in April 1846, following a series of skirmishes along the Texas-Mexico border. The road to Chapultepec. By the time of the Battle of Chapultepec, the United States had already achieved several significant victories in the war. The U.S. Army, under the command of General Winfield Scott, had successfully landed at Veracruz in March 1847 and had been steadily advancing towards Mexico City. The capture of Mexico City was seen as crucial to ending the war, as it was the political and cultural heart of Mexico. Chapultepec Castle, located on a hill overlooking Mexico City, was a key defensive position for the Mexican army. The castle was not only a military stronghold but also a symbol of Mexican pride and resistance. The U.S. forces recognized the importance of capturing Chapultepec as a precursor to taking Mexico City. The Battle of Chapultepec. The Mexican defenses. Chapultepec Castle was defended by a force of approximately 1,000 Mexican soldiers, including cadets from the military college, which was housed within the castle. The Mexican forces were commanded by General Nicolas Bravo, a veteran of the Mexican War of Independence. The castle was heavily fortified, with artillery positioned to defend against any assault. The Mexican army had also established defensive positions along the approaches to the castle, including the Molino del Rey, King's Mill, and the Casa Mata, which had been the site of a fierce battle just days before the assault on Chapultepec. Despite these preparations, the Mexican forces were outnumbered and outgunned by the advancing U.S. troops. The U.S. assault. The U.S. forces, numbering around 7,000 men, were divided into several divisions under the overall command of General Winfield Scott. The assault on Chapultepec was planned as a two-pronged attack, with one division attacking from the west and another from the east. The U.S. troops were supported by artillery, which had been positioned to bombard the castle and its defenses. The battle began on the morning of September 12, 1847, with a heavy artillery bombardment of Chapultepec Castle. The U.S. artillery, under the command of Captain Robert E. Lee, who would later become a prominent Confederate general during the American Civil War, targeted the castle's walls and defensive positions. The bombardment continued throughout the day, causing significant damage to the castle and its defenses. On the morning of September 13th, the U.S. infantry launched their assault on the castle. The attack was led by the 4th U.S. Infantry and the Marine Corps, who advanced under heavy fire from the Mexican defenders. The U.S. troops faced fierce resistance as they scaled the steep slopes leading to the castle, but they eventually breached the walls and entered the castle. The heroic defense. The defense of Chapultepec Castle is remembered for the bravery and sacrifice of the Mexican cadets, known as the Niños Héroes, boy heroes. These young cadets, some as young as 13 years old, fought valiantly to defend the castle against the overwhelming U.S. forces. According to legend, 6 of the cadets chose to die rather than surrender, with one wrapping himself in the Mexican flag and leaping from the castle walls to prevent it from being captured by the enemy. While the exact details of the cadets' actions are debated, their heroism has become a symbol of Mexican resistance and national pride. The Niños Héroes are commemorated in Mexico as martyrs who gave their lives in defense of their country. The fall of Chapultepec. Despite the heroic defense, the U.S. forces eventually overwhelmed the Mexican defenders. By the afternoon of September 13th, the castle had fallen, and the U.S. flag was raised over Chapultepec. The capture of the castle was a significant victory for the United States, as it opened the way for the advance on Mexico City. The fall of Chapultepec was a devastating blow to the Mexican army and morale. With the loss of this key defensive position, the Mexican forces were unable to prevent the U.S. troops from entering Mexico City. The U.S. Army entered the city on September 14, 1847, effectively ending the war. Aftermath and legacy. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The capture of Mexico City and the fall of Chapultepec led to the end of the Mexican-American War. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2, 1848, formally ended the conflict and established the terms of peace between the United States and Mexico. Under the treaty, Mexico ceded a vast amount of territory to the United States, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma. In return, the United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million and $3.25 million in debts owed by Mexico to U.S. citizens. The treaty had profound implications for both countries. For the United States, it marked a significant expansion of its territory and set the stage for the country's westward expansion. For Mexico, the loss of territory was a devastating blow, leading to a period of political instability and economic hardship. The legacy of the Battle of Chapultepec. The Battle of Chapultepec has left a lasting legacy in both the United States and Mexico. In the United States, the battle is remembered as a key moment in the Mexican-American War and a testament to the bravery and determination of the U.S. forces. The Marine Corps, in particular, holds the battle in high regard, as it was during the assault on Chapultepec that the Marines first adopted the phrase "from the halls of Montezuma" in their hymn, commemorating their role in the battle. In Mexico, the battle is remembered as a symbol of national resistance and pride. The heroism of the Niños Héroes is celebrated as an example of the sacrifices made by Mexicans in defense of their country. Chapultepec Castle has been preserved as a national monument and museum, serving as a reminder of the battle and its significance in Mexican history. The impact on U.S.-Mexico relations. The Mexican-American War and the Battle of Chapultepec had a lasting impact on the relationship between the United States and Mexico. The war and the subsequent Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo created a legacy of mistrust and resentment between the two countries that persists to this day. The loss of territory and the perceived injustice of the treaty have been sources of tension in U.S.-Mexico relations, influencing diplomatic and cultural interactions over the years. However, the war also led to increased interaction and exchange between the two countries, as the newly acquired territories became part of the United States and were settled by American pioneers. The blending of cultures and the shared history of the region have contributed to the complex and multifaceted relationship between the United States and Mexico. The Battle of Chapultepec was a defining moment in the Mexican-American War, marking the culmination of the U.S. advance on Mexico City and the eventual end of the conflict. The battle showcased the bravery and determination of both the U.S. and Mexican forces, with the heroism of the Niños Héroes becoming a symbol of Mexican national pride. The fall of Chapultepec and the subsequent capture of Mexico City led to the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which had profound implications for both countries. The legacy of the Battle of Chapultepec continues to be felt in the United States and Mexico, shaping the historical and cultural narratives of both nations. The battle serves as a reminder of the complexities of war and the enduring impact of historical events on the present. As we reflect on the Battle of Chapultepec, we are reminded of the sacrifices made by those who fought and the importance of understanding the past to navigate the challenges of the future. The Niños Héroes, or boy heroes, are a group of 6 Mexican military cadets who died defending Chapultepec Castle during the Battle of Chapultepec in the Mexican-American War on September 13, 1847. Their sacrifice has become a symbol of Mexican patriotism, bravery, and resistance against foreign invasion. This article delves into the historical context, the events leading up to their deaths, and the lasting impact of the Niños Héroes on Mexican national identity. Historical context: the Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, was a conflict between the United States and Mexico, primarily over the annexation of Texas by the U.S. and the subsequent dispute over the border between Texas and Mexico. The war was also driven by the U.S. policy of manifest destiny, which held that the United States was destined to expand across the North American continent. Mexico, having recently gained independence from Spain in 1821, was a young and unstable nation. The country faced internal strife, economic difficulties, and a lack of strong central governance. These factors made Mexico vulnerable to external threats, including the aggressive expansionist policies of the United States. The Battle of Chapultepec Castle, located on a hill in Mexico City, was a strategic military position. It served as the Mexican Military Academy and was the last line of defense before the U.S. forces could enter the capital. The castle was defended by a small contingent of Mexican soldiers, including cadets from the Military Academy. On September 12, 1847, U.S. forces under the command of General Winfield Scott began their assault on Chapultepec. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Mexican defenders, including the cadets, put up a fierce resistance. The battle lasted for most of the day, but by the evening, U.S. forces had breached the castle's defenses. The Niños Héroes 6 cadets. The 6 cadets who are remembered as the Niños Héroes are Juan de la Barrera, the oldest of the cadets at 19 years old. He was an engineering student and a lieutenant. Juan Escotilla, often depicted as the cadet who wrapped himself in the Mexican flag and jumped from the castle to prevent it from being captured by the enemy. Francisco Marquez, at just 13 years old, he was the youngest of the cadets. Agustin Melgar, known for his bravery in combat, he was 18 years old. Fernando Montes de Oca, also 18 years old, he fought valiantly during the battle. Vicente Suarez, at 14 years old, he was one of the younger cadets who stood his ground against the invading forces. The sacrifice. As U.S. forces stormed Chapultepec Castle, the cadets were ordered to retreat. However, 6 of them chose to stay and fight to the death. Their actions were not only a display of extraordinary bravery but also a symbol of resistance against a powerful invading force. The most famous of these cadets, Juan Escotilla, is often depicted as wrapping himself in the Mexican flag and leaping from the castle to prevent it from being captured by the enemy. While this particular act is a matter of historical debate, it has become a powerful symbol of Mexican patriotism and sacrifice. The aftermath. The fall of Mexico City. The fall of Chapultepec Castle marked the end of significant Mexican resistance in the war. Shortly after the battle, U.S. forces entered Mexico City, and the Mexican government was forced to negotiate a peace treaty. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2, 1848, ended the war and resulted in Mexico ceding a vast amount of territory to the United States, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Texas. The legacy of the Niños Héroes sacrifice of the Niños Héroes quickly became a symbol of Mexican resistance and patriotism. Their story was used to inspire future generations of Mexicans to defend their country against foreign aggression and to uphold the values of bravery, honor, and sacrifice. In the years following the war, the Niños Héroes were commemorated in various ways. Monuments were erected in their honor, and their story was taught in schools as an example of national heroism. The Mexican government also established September 13 as a day of national mourning and remembrance. The Niños Héroes in Mexican national identity symbol of resistance. The Niños Héroes have become a powerful symbol of Mexican resistance against foreign domination. Their sacrifice is often invoked in times of national crisis or when Mexico faces external threats. The story of the Niños Héroes serves as a reminder of the importance of defending national sovereignty and the values of independence and self-determination. Influence on Mexican culture. The Niños Héroes have had a profound impact on Mexican culture. Their story has been immortalized in literature, art, and music. They are often depicted in murals, paintings, and sculptures, and their sacrifice is celebrated in songs and poems. The Niños Héroes have also been featured in Mexican films and television shows, further cementing their place in the national consciousness. Educational impact. The story of the Niños Héroes is a staple of Mexican education. From a young age, Mexican children are taught about the bravery and sacrifice of the 6 cadets. This education serves to instill a sense of national pride and a commitment to the values of honor, duty, and patriotism. The Niños Héroes are often held up as role models for young Mexicans, encouraging them to strive for excellence and to be willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. Political symbolism. The Niños Héroes have also been used as a political symbol by various Mexican leaders and movements. During the Mexican Revolution, 1910 to 1920, the story of the Niños Héroes was invoked to inspire revolutionaries to fight for social justice and national sovereignty. In more recent times, the Niños Héroes have been used to rally support for various political causes, including opposition to foreign intervention and the defense of national resources, controversies and debates. Historical accuracy. While the story of the Niños Héroes is widely accepted as a symbol of Mexican patriotism, there are some debates and controversies surrounding the historical accuracy of certain details. For example, the story of Juan Escotilla wrapping himself in the Mexican flag and jumping from the castle is often questioned by historians. Some argue that this particular act may have been embellished or mythologized over time. Despite these debates, the overall narrative of the Niños Héroes sacrifice remains a powerful and enduring symbol of Mexican resistance and patriotism. The historical accuracy of specific details does not diminish the significance of their actions or the impact they have had on Mexican national identity. Political manipulation. Like many national symbols, the Niños Héroes have sometimes been used for political purposes. Different political groups and leaders have invoked their story to justify various policies or actions. While this can serve to unite people around a common cause, it can also lead to the manipulation of their legacy for partisan purposes. It is important to recognize the complexity of the Niños Héroes legacy and to approach their story with a critical eye. While their sacrifice is undeniably significant, it is also important to understand the broader historical context in which they lived and died. The Niños Héroes are a central part of Mexican history and national identity. Their sacrifice during the Battle of Chapultepec has become a powerful symbol of Mexican resistance, bravery, and patriotism. The story of the 6 cadets who chose to fight to the death rather than retreat has inspired generations of Mexicans to defend their country and uphold the values of honor and duty. While there are debates and controversies surrounding certain aspects of their story, the overall narrative of the Niños Héroes remains a powerful and enduring symbol of Mexican national identity. Their legacy continues to be celebrated in Mexican culture, education, and politics, serving as a reminder of the importance of defending national sovereignty and the values of independence and self-determination. The Niños Héroes are more than just historical figures. They are a symbol of the resilience and strength of the Mexican people. Their story serves as a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, it is possible to stand up for what is right and to fight for the values that define a nation. The Niños Héroes will forever be remembered as heroes of Mexico, and their legacy will continue to inspire future generations to come. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, was a pivotal conflict in the history of North America, shaping the destinies of both the United States and Mexico. Among the many battles and skirmishes that defined this war, the capture of Chapultepec Castle stands out as a significant event. This fortress, located on a hill overlooking Mexico City, was not only a strategic military position, but also a symbol of Mexican national pride. The fall of Chapultepec on September 13, 1847, marked a turning point in the war, leading to the eventual capture of Mexico City and the conclusion of the conflict. This article delves into the historical context, the battle itself, and the far-reaching consequences of the capture of Chapultepec Castle on the Mexican-American War. Historical context: the origins of the Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War was rooted in the annexation of Texas by the United States in 1845. Texas had declared independence from Mexico in 1836, following the Texas Revolution, and sought to join the United States. Mexico, however, never recognized Texas's independence and viewed its annexation by the U.S. as an act of aggression. Tensions escalated over the disputed border between Texas and Mexico, with the U.S. claiming the Rio Grande as the boundary and Mexico insisting on the Nueces River further north. In April 1846, a skirmish between American and Mexican troops in the disputed territory led to President James K. Polk requesting a declaration of war from Congress. The U.S. Congress approved the declaration, and the Mexican-American War began. The strategic importance of Chapultepec Castle. Chapultepec Castle, perched atop Chapultepec Hill, was a formidable fortress that had served various purposes throughout Mexican history. Originally built as a military academy, it was also used as a residence for Mexican leaders and a symbol of national sovereignty. By the time of the Mexican-American War, Chapultepec Castle was a key defensive position for Mexico City, the capital of Mexico. The castle's elevated position provided a commanding view of the surrounding area, making it an ideal location for artillery and a last line of defense against invading forces. Its capture would not only open the way to Mexico City but also deliver a psychological blow to the Mexican defenders. The Battle of Chapultepec. Prelude to the battle. By September 1847, the U.S. Army, under the command of General Winfield Scott, had advanced deep into Mexican territory. After a series of victories, including the battles of Palo Alto, Resaca de la Palma, Monterrey, and Buena Vista, Scott's forces were poised to capture Mexico City. The final obstacle was Chapultepec Castle, which was defended by Mexican troops under the command of General Nicolas Bravo. The Mexican defenders included regular army units, cadets from the military academy, and volunteers. Among the defenders were the Niños Héroes, boy heroes, 6 young cadets who would become legendary for their bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. The assault on Chapultepec. On September 12, 1847, U.S. forces began their assault on Chapultepec Castle. The attack was preceded by a heavy artillery bombardment, which targeted the castle's walls and defenses. The bombardment caused significant damage, but the Mexican defenders held their ground. The following day, September 13, U.S. troops launched a ground assault on the castle. The attack was led by General John A. Quitman's division, which included the U.S. Marines, and General Gideon J. Pillow's division. The assault was fierce and bloody, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Mexican defenders, including the young cadets, fought valiantly but were ultimately overwhelmed by the superior numbers and firepower of the U.S. forces. The castle fell to the Americans by mid-afternoon, and the U.S. flag was raised over Chapultepec. The Niños Héroes story of the Niños Héroes has become a symbol of Mexican resistance and national pride. According to legend, as the U.S. forces closed in on the castle, 6 young cadets refused to surrender and fought to the death. One of them, Juan Escotilla, is said to have wrapped himself in the Mexican flag and leaped from the castle walls to prevent it from being captured by the enemy. While the exact details of their actions are debated, the Niños Héroes have been immortalized in Mexican history and culture as symbols of bravery and sacrifice. Their legacy continues to inspire Mexicans to this day. The fall of Mexico City. With the capture of Chapultepec Castle, the path to Mexico City was open. U.S. forces quickly advanced on the capital, and on September 14, 1847, General Scott's troops entered Mexico City. The fall of the capital marked the effective end of organized Mexican resistance. The capture of Mexico City was a devastating blow to the Mexican government and military. President Antonio López de Santa Anna, who had returned to power during the war, fled the city, and the Mexican government was left in disarray. The U.S. occupation of Mexico City lasted until June 1848, when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, officially ending the war. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2, 1848, formally ended the Mexican-American War. The treaty had far-reaching consequences for both nations. Territorial changes. Under the terms of the treaty, Mexico ceded a vast amount of territory to the United States, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma. This transfer of land, known as the Mexican Cession, amounted to approximately 525,000 square miles, 1,360,000 square kilometers, and represented about 55% of Mexico's pre-war territory. In return, the United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million, equivalent to about $500 million today, and assume $3.25 million in debts owed by Mexico to American citizens. Impact on Mexico. The loss of such a significant portion of its territory was a profound blow to Mexico. The war and the subsequent treaty left Mexico economically weakened and politically unstable. The loss of resources, including valuable mineral deposits and agricultural land, hindered Mexico's development for decades. The war also had a lasting impact on Mexican national identity. The defeat and the loss of territory were seen as a national humiliation, and the memory of the war and the Niños Héroes became a source of pride and resilience. Impact on the United States. For the United States, the Mexican-American War and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo marked a significant expansion of its territory. The acquisition of the Mexican Cession fulfilled the concept of manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was destined to expand across the North American continent. The new territories brought both opportunities and challenges. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 led to the California Gold Rush, attracting thousands of settlers and accelerating the development of the western United States. However, the question of whether slavery would be allowed in the new territories also intensified sectional tensions between the North and the South, contributing to the eventual outbreak of the American Civil War in 1861. The legacy of Chapultepec Castle. The capture of Chapultepec Castle left a lasting legacy in both Mexican and American history. For Mexico, the battle and the fall of the castle became symbols of national resistance and the sacrifices made in defense of the homeland. The Niños Héroes are commemorated in Mexican culture, and Chapultepec Castle is now a national museum and a symbol of Mexican heritage. For the United States, the Battle of Chapultepec is remembered as a key moment in the Mexican-American War and a testament to the bravery and determination of American soldiers. The U.S. Marine Corps, in particular, honors the battle with the opening lines of the Marines' hymn, "From the Halls of Montezuma," a reference to Chapultepec Castle. Conclusion: the capture of Chapultepec Castle was a pivotal event in the Mexican-American War, leading to the fall of Mexico City and the eventual conclusion of the conflict. The battle had profound consequences for both nations, shaping their histories and leaving a lasting legacy. For Mexico, the loss of territory and the memory of the Niños Héroes became symbols of national pride and resilience. For the United States, the war and the acquisition of new territories fulfilled the vision of manifest destiny but also sowed the seeds of future conflict. The story of Chapultepec Castle and the Mexican-American War is a reminder of the complex and often tragic history of North America, where the ambitions and struggles of nations have shaped the lives of millions. The legacy of Chapultepec continues to resonate, serving as a testament to the courage and sacrifice of those who fought and died in the name of their countries. The Battle of Chapultepec, fought on September 12 to 13, 1847, was a pivotal engagement during the Mexican-American War. It marked the culmination of General Winfield Scott's campaign to capture Mexico City and effectively end the war. Scott's strategies during this battle were a testament to his military acumen, showcasing his ability to adapt to challenging terrain, coordinate complex maneuvers, and inspire his troops. This article delves into the main strategies employed by General Winfield Scott during the Battle of Chapultepec, examining their formulation, execution, and impact on the outcome of the battle. Background: the road to Chapultepec. Before delving into the specifics of the Battle of Chapultepec, it is essential to understand the broader context of the Mexican-American War and Scott's campaign. The war, which began in 1846, was primarily driven by territorial disputes between the United States and Mexico, particularly over the annexation of Texas. General Winfield Scott, a seasoned military leader with experience in the War of 1812 and the Seminole Wars, was appointed to lead the American forces in a campaign to capture Mexico City. Scott's campaign began with the successful amphibious landing at Veracruz in March 1847. After securing the port, Scott's forces advanced inland, engaging in a series of battles, including Cerro Gordo, Contreras, and Churubusco. Each victory brought Scott closer to his ultimate objective, Mexico City. However, the capture of the Mexican capital was no easy feat. The city was heavily fortified, and its approaches were defended by formidable natural and man-made obstacles. Among these was Chapultepec Castle, a historic fortress situated on a hill overlooking the city. The strategic importance of Chapultepec Castle was a key strategic objective for Scott. Located on a 200-foot-high hill, the fortress provided a commanding view of the surrounding area, including the approaches to Mexico City. The castle was defended by a garrison of Mexican troops, including cadets from the Mexican Military Academy, and was surrounded by a series of fortifications and artillery batteries. For Scott, capturing Chapultepec was essential for several reasons. Control of the high ground. The castle's elevated position made it a critical observation and artillery post. Controlling Chapultepec would allow Scott to dominate the surrounding terrain and provide covering fire for his advancing troops. Psychological impact. The capture of such a symbolic and historic site would have a demoralizing effect on the Mexican defenders and boost the morale of the American troops. Access to Mexico City. Chapultepec was one of the last major obstacles before reaching the gates of Mexico City. Its capture would open the way for Scott's forces to enter the capital and bring the war to a decisive conclusion. Given these considerations, Scott devised a comprehensive strategy to seize Chapultepec and achieve his objectives. Scott's preparations and intelligence gathering. One of Scott's key strengths as a military leader was his emphasis on thorough preparation and intelligence gathering. Before launching his assault on Chapultepec, Scott took several steps to ensure the success of his operation. Reconnaissance and terrain analysis. Scott recognized the importance of understanding the terrain and the enemy's defenses. He ordered detailed reconnaissance of the Chapultepec area, including the castle's fortifications, the surrounding terrain, and the Mexican troop dispositions. This information was crucial for planning the assault and identifying potential weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. Logistical planning. Scott's campaign was marked by meticulous logistical planning. He ensured that his troops were well supplied with ammunition, food, and medical supplies. This was particularly important given the extended nature of the campaign and the need to maintain momentum in the face of stiff resistance. Coordination with naval forces. Scott's campaign benefited from close coordination with the U.S. Navy, which provided crucial support during the amphibious landing at Veracruz and subsequent operations. Naval gunfire support was also available for the assault on Chapultepec, providing additional firepower to suppress Mexican defenses. The assault plan, a multi-pronged approach. Scott's strategy for the Battle of Chapultepec involved a multi-pronged approach designed to overwhelm the Mexican defenders and secure the fortress. The plan consisted of several key elements. 1. Artillery bombardment. Scott recognized the importance of artillery in softening up enemy defenses before an assault. He ordered a sustained artillery bombardment of Chapultepec Castle and its surrounding fortifications. The bombardment was intended to destroy or disable Mexican artillery. By targeting the Mexican artillery batteries, Scott aimed to reduce the enemy's ability to inflict casualties on his advancing troops, demoralize the defenders. The constant shelling was designed to weaken the morale of the Mexican troops and create confusion and disarray within their ranks. Breach the walls. The bombardment aimed to create breaches in the castle's walls, providing entry points for the assaulting forces. Point 2. Diversionary attacks to distract the Mexican defenders and prevent them from concentrating their forces. Scott ordered diversionary attacks on other parts of the Mexican defensive line. These attacks were intended to fix Mexican troops in place. By engaging Mexican forces at multiple points, Scott aimed to prevent them from reinforcing Chapultepec, create opportunities for flanking maneuvers. The diversionary attacks created opportunities for Scott's forces to exploit gaps in the Mexican defenses and outflank the enemy. Point 3. The main assault, scaling the heights. The centerpiece of Scott's strategy was the main assault on Chapultepec Castle itself. This involved a direct assault on the fortress, with troops scaling the steep slopes under heavy fire. The assault was divided into several phases. Initial assault. The first wave of troops would advance under cover of artillery fire, using ladders and other climbing equipment to scale the walls, securing the breaches. Once the initial breaches were secured, additional troops would follow, expanding the foothold and engaging the defenders in close combat. Exploitation of success. With the castle's defenses breached, Scott's forces would push forward to secure the entire fortress and prevent any counterattacks. Point 4. Coordination and timing. A critical aspect of Scott's strategy was the coordination and timing of the various elements of the assault. He ensured that the artillery bombardment, diversionary attacks, and main assault were synchronized to maximize their effectiveness. This required precise communication and coordination among the different units involved. Execution of the plan. The battle unfolds. The Battle of Chapultepec began on September 12, 1847, with the American artillery bombardment of the castle. The bombardment continued throughout the day, causing significant damage to the fortress and its defenses. Meanwhile, diversionary attacks were launched on other parts of the Mexican line, drawing away some of the defenders. On the morning of September 13, Scott ordered the main assault on Chapultepec. The assault was led by a force of approximately 500 men, including elements of the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Army. The troops advanced under heavy fire, using ladders to scale the walls and breach the defenses. The fighting was intense and bloody, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Mexican defenders, including the young cadets of the military academy, fought bravely but were ultimately overwhelmed by the sheer determination and firepower of the American assault. By mid-morning, the American forces had secured the castle, and the Mexican defenders were forced to retreat. Key factors in Scott's success. Several factors contributed to the success of Scott's strategy at Chapultepec. 1. Superior firepower. Scott's forces had a significant advantage in artillery, which played a crucial role in the battle. The sustained bombardment weakened the Mexican defenses and provided cover for the assaulting troops. Point 2. Effective coordination. The coordination between the different elements of Scott's plan was a key factor in its success. The synchronization of the artillery bombardment, diversionary attacks, and main assault created a cohesive and overwhelming offensive. Point 3. Troop morale and leadership. Scott's leadership and the morale of his troops were critical to the success of the assault. Despite the challenging terrain and heavy resistance, the American troops remained determined and focused on their objective. Point 4. Exploitation of weaknesses. Scott's strategy effectively exploited weaknesses in the Mexican defenses. The diversionary attacks prevented the defenders from concentrating their forces, while the main assault targeted the most vulnerable points in the fortress. Aftermath and impact. The capture of Chapultepec was a decisive victory for Scott and marked the beginning of the end for Mexican resistance. With the fortress in American hands, Scott's forces were able to advance into Mexico City, which fell shortly thereafter. The fall of Mexico City effectively ended the Mexican-American War, leading to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. The Battle of Chapultepec also had a lasting impact on the U.S. military. The bravery and determination displayed by the American troops, particularly the Marines, became a source of pride and inspiration. The phrase, "from the halls of Montezuma," which appears in the Marine Corps hymn, is a reference to the Battle of Chapultepec. General Winfield Scott's strategies during the Battle of Chapultepec were a masterclass in military planning and execution. His ability to coordinate complex maneuvers, exploit enemy The Battle of Chapultepec, fought on September 12 to 13, 1847, was a pivotal moment in the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. This conflict, which arose from territorial disputes and the United States' expansionist ambitions, saw the U.S. Army march deep into Mexican territory, culminating in the assault on Chapultepec Castle. Situated on a hill overlooking Mexico City, Chapultepec Castle was a strategic stronghold and the site of the Mexican Military Academy. Its fall would pave the way for the capture of Mexico City, effectively ending the war. This article delves into the meticulous preparations undertaken by the Mexican defenders to repel the American assault on Chapultepec Castle. It explores the strategic, tactical, and logistical measures implemented by the Mexican military, the role of leadership, the morale of the troops, and the broader political and social context of the time. By examining these factors, we gain a deeper understanding of the Mexican defense efforts and the challenges they faced in the face of a formidable adversary. Chapter 1. The strategic importance of Chapultepec Castle. Geographic and military significance. Chapultepec Castle, perched atop Chapultepec Hill, was a critical defensive position for Mexico City. The hill, rising approximately 200 feet above the surrounding terrain, provided a commanding view of the city and its approaches. Control of Chapultepec meant control of the western entrance to Mexico City, making it a linchpin in the city's defense. The castle itself, originally built as a viceregal residence in the 18th century, had been repurposed as the Mexican Military Academy in 1833. Its sturdy construction and elevated position made it an ideal fortress. The surrounding area, including the Molino del Rey, King's Mill, and the Casa Mata, formed a defensive complex that the Mexican military sought to fortify against the advancing U.S. forces. The broader context of the Mexican-American War. To understand the preparations for the defense of Chapultepec, it is essential to consider the broader context of the Mexican-American War. The war began in 1846, following the U.S. annexation of Texas, which Mexico still considered its territory. The conflict quickly escalated, with the U.S. launching a series of invasions into Mexican territory, including General Zachary Taylor's campaign in northern Mexico and General Winfield Scott's amphibious landing at Veracruz. By the time of the Chapultepec assault, Scott's forces had advanced inland, winning key battles at Cerro Gordo, Contreras, and Churubusco. The fall of Chapultepec would be the final step before the capture of Mexico City, the Mexican capital. For the Mexican defenders, the stakes could not have been higher. Chapter 2. The Mexican military in 1847. The state of the Mexican Army. The Mexican Army in 1847 was a reflection of the young nation's turbulent history. Since gaining independence from Spain in 1821, Mexico had experienced political instability, economic challenges, and internal conflicts. These factors had a profound impact on the military's organization, training, and morale. The army was composed of a mix of regular troops, militia units, and conscripts. While some units were well-trained and equipped, others lacked the necessary resources and experience. The officer corps was often divided by political loyalties, which affected coordination and command effectiveness. Leadership and command structure. The Mexican defense of Chapultepec was led by General Antonio López de Santa Anna, the dominant political and military figure of the time. Santa Anna, who had served multiple terms as president, was a controversial and polarizing leader. His leadership style was characterized by boldness and charisma, but also by inconsistency and a tendency to prioritize personal ambition over national interests. Under Santa Anna's overall command, the defense of Chapultepec was overseen by General Nicolas Bravo, a veteran of the War of Independence and a respected military leader. Bravo was tasked with organizing the defense of the castle and its surrounding positions, including the Molino del Rey and Casa Mata. Chapter 3, Preparations for the Defense of Chapultepec. Fortification of Chapultepec Castle. The Mexican defenders recognized the importance of fortifying Chapultepec Castle to withstand the impending American assault. The castle's natural defenses were augmented with a series of man-made fortifications, including trenches, barricades, and artillery emplacements. The castle's walls were reinforced, and additional barriers were constructed to impede the advance of enemy troops. The defenders also prepared for close-quarters combat by stockpiling weapons, ammunition, and other supplies within the castle. Deployment of troops and artillery. The Mexican military deployed a significant number of troops to defend Chapultepec and its surrounding positions. The exact number of defenders is a matter of historical debate, but estimates suggest that several thousand Mexican soldiers were stationed in the area. Artillery played a crucial role in the defense of Chapultepec. The castle's elevated position allowed the Mexican gunners to target approaching enemy forces with relative impunity. The defenders positioned their cannons to cover the main avenues of approach, including the causeways leading to the castle. The role of the military cadets. One of the most iconic aspects of the defense of Chapultepec was the participation of the young cadets from the Mexican Military Academy. Known as the Niños Héroes, boy heroes, these cadets, some as young as 13 years old, fought bravely alongside the regular troops. The cadets' role in the defense of Chapultepec has been the subject of much myth and legend. While their exact numbers and actions are difficult to verify, their presence symbolized the determination and sacrifice of the Mexican defenders. The story of the Niños Héroes has become a powerful symbol of Mexican patriotism and resistance. Logistical and supply considerations. The Mexican defenders faced significant logistical challenges in preparing for the American assault. The country's strained economy and infrastructure made it difficult to supply the troops with adequate food, ammunition, and medical supplies. Despite these challenges, the defenders made efforts to stockpile resources within Chapultepec Castle. They also established supply lines to bring in additional materials and reinforcements, though these were often disrupted by the advancing U.S. forces. Chapter 4, The American Approach and Mexican Countermeasures. The U.S. Army's strategy. General Winfield Scott's strategy for capturing Mexico City involved a series of coordinated assaults on key defensive positions, culminating in the attack on Chapultepec. Scott's forces had already secured victories at Molino del Rey and Casa Mata, which were critical to isolating Chapultepec and cutting off potential reinforcements. Scott planned a two-pronged assault on Chapultepec, with one column attacking from the west and another from the south. The U.S. Army's superior artillery and disciplined infantry were expected to overwhelm the Mexican defenders. Mexican countermeasures and tactics. In response to the American strategy, the Mexican defenders implemented a series of countermeasures. They focused on strengthening their defensive positions, particularly the approaches to the castle. Trenches and barricades were constructed to slow down the advancing enemy troops and expose them to Mexican fire. The defenders also employed guerrilla tactics, using the rugged terrain to their advantage. Small groups of Mexican soldiers were deployed to harass the U.S. forces, disrupt their supply lines, and gather intelligence on their movements. The role of intelligence and reconnaissance. Both sides recognized the importance of intelligence and reconnaissance in the lead-up to the battle. The Mexican defenders sent out scouts to monitor the movements of the U.S. forces and gather information on their strength and intentions. However, the Mexican military's intelligence capabilities were limited by a lack of resources and coordination. This made it difficult to anticipate the full scope of the American assault and to respond effectively to their maneuvers. Chapter 5. The Battle of Chapultepec. The initial assault. The American assault on Chapultepec began on September 12, 1847, with a heavy artillery bombardment. The U.S. Army's cannons targeted the castle's walls and defensive positions, seeking to weaken the Mexican defenses before the infantry attack. The Mexican defenders responded with their own artillery fire, targeting the advancing U.S. troops. Despite the intense bombardment, the Mexican gunners managed to inflict significant casualties on the enemy, slowing their progress. The infantry assault. On September 13, the U.S. infantry launched their assault on Chapultepec. The American troops, led by officers such as Lieutenant Ulysses S. Grant and Captain Robert E. Lee, advanced under heavy fire from the Mexican defenders. The Mexican soldiers and cadets fought valiantly, using their fortified positions to repel the initial waves of attackers. However, the sheer numbers and discipline of the U.S. forces eventually began to tell. The American troops breached the castle's defenses and fought their way into the interior. The fall of Chapultepec. Despite their determined resistance, the Mexican defenders were unable to hold Chapultepec against the overwhelming American assault. The castle fell on September 13, 1847. Marking a decisive victory for the U.S. Army. The fall of Chapultepec had immediate and far-reaching consequences. With the castle in American hands, the path to Mexico City was open. The U.S. forces entered the capital on September 14, effectively ending the Mexican-American War. Chapter 6. Aftermath and legacy. The impact on the Mexican-American War. The fall of Chapultepec and the subsequent capture. The Battle of Chapultepec, fought on September 12 to 13, 1847, was a pivotal engagement during the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. This battle, which took place at Chapultepec Castle, a fortified military academy on the outskirts of Mexico City, was a decisive moment in the conflict. The American victory at Chapultepec paved the way for the capture of Mexico City and ultimately led to the end of the war. Artillery played a crucial role in the outcome of the Battle of Chapultepec, influencing both the tactical and strategic dimensions of the engagement. This article will explore the role of artillery in the Battle of Chapultepec, examining its impact on the battle's outcome, the tactics employed by both sides, and the broader implications for the Mexican-American War. Historical context. The Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War was a conflict between the United States and Mexico that arose from the annexation of Texas by the United States in 1845. The war was fought over territorial disputes, with the United States seeking to expand its territory westward, while Mexico sought to retain control over its northern territories. The war began in April 1846 and lasted until February 1848, culminating in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ceded vast territories, including present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, to the United States. The road to Chapultepec. By the time of the Battle of Chapultepec, the United States had already achieved several significant victories in the war, including the capture of Monterrey and the Battle of Buena Vista. However, the capture of Mexico City, the capital of Mexico, was seen as essential to securing a decisive victory. The road to Mexico City was heavily defended, and the American forces, under the command of General Winfield Scott, faced numerous challenges as they advanced towards the capital. Chapultepec Castle, located on a hill overlooking Mexico City, was a key defensive position for the Mexican army. The castle was not only a military stronghold, but also a symbol of Mexican resistance. The American forces recognized that capturing Chapultepec was essential to their strategy of taking Mexico City, and they prepared for a fierce battle. The role of artillery in the Battle of Chapultepec. Artillery in the 19th century. Artillery in the mid-19th century was a critical component of military strategy and tactics. The development of more advanced artillery pieces, such as rifled cannons and howitzers, had increased the range, accuracy, and destructive power of artillery. Artillery was used for a variety of purposes on the battlefield, including softening enemy defenses, providing cover for advancing troops, and disrupting enemy formations. In the context of the Mexican-American War, artillery played a significant role in several key battles. The American forces, in particular, had a well-organized and effective artillery corps, which gave them a significant advantage in many engagements. The Mexican army, while also equipped with artillery, often struggled to match the firepower and coordination of the American artillery units. American artillery at Chapultepec. The American artillery played a crucial role in the Battle of Chapultepec, both in the preparatory bombardment and during the assault on the castle. General Winfield Scott, the commander of the American forces, recognized the importance of artillery in weakening the Mexican defenses and supporting the infantry assault. Preparatory bombardment. In the days leading up to the assault on Chapultepec, the American artillery conducted a sustained bombardment of the castle and its surrounding defenses. The goal of the bombardment was to weaken the Mexican defenses, destroy key fortifications, and demoralize the defenders. The American artillery, which included both field guns and heavier siege artillery, was positioned to provide effective fire on the castle and its approaches. The bombardment was highly effective, causing significant damage to the castle's walls and fortifications. The Mexican defenders, who were already outnumbered and outgunned, were further demoralized by the relentless artillery fire. The preparatory bombardment also disrupted the Mexican artillery, which was unable to effectively respond to the American fire. Supporting the assault. During the assault on Chapultepec, the American artillery provided critical support to the advancing infantry. The artillery was used to suppress Mexican fire, target key defensive positions, and provide cover for the infantry as they advanced up the hill towards the castle. The American artillery was able to maintain a high rate of fire, keeping the Mexican defenders pinned down and unable to effectively respond to the assault point. One of the key moments in the battle was the use of artillery to breach the castle's walls. The American artillery concentrated its fire on a section of the wall, creating a breach that allowed the infantry to storm the castle. This coordinated use of artillery and infantry was a hallmark of General Scott's tactics, and was instrumental in the American victory at Chapultepec. Mexican artillery at Chapultepec. The Mexican artillery at Chapultepec was less effective than its American counterpart, but it still played a role in the battle. The Mexican defenders had a number of artillery pieces positioned within the castle and its surrounding defenses. However, the Mexican artillery was hampered by several factors, including a lack of coordination, inferior equipment, and the effects of the American bombardment. Defensive fire. The Mexican artillery was primarily used for defensive purposes, targeting the advancing American troops as they approached the castle. However, the effectiveness of the Mexican artillery was limited by the American bombardment, which disrupted the Mexican gun crews and damaged their artillery pieces. Additionally, the Mexican artillery was unable to concentrate its fire effectively, as the American artillery kept the Mexican gunners under constant pressure. Counter-battery fire. The Mexican artillery also attempted to engage in counter-battery fire, targeting the American artillery positions. However, this effort was largely unsuccessful, as the American artillery was better positioned and more effectively coordinated. The Mexican counter-battery fire was sporadic and ineffective, and it failed to significantly disrupt the American artillery. Tactical and strategic implications. The effective use of artillery by the American forces at Chapultepec had significant tactical and strategic implications. Tactically, the artillery played a key role in weakening the Mexican defenses and supporting the infantry assault. The preparatory bombardment caused significant damage to the castle's fortifications and demoralized the defenders, while the artillery support during the assault allowed the infantry to advance with minimal casualties. Strategically, the American victory at Chapultepec was a turning point in the Mexican-American War. The capture of Chapultepec opened the way for the American forces to enter Mexico City, which fell shortly thereafter. The fall of Mexico City effectively ended the war, as the Mexican government was forced to negotiate a peace treaty with the United States. The success of the American artillery at Chapultepec also demonstrated the importance of artillery in modern warfare. The coordinated use of artillery and infantry, combined with effective leadership and planning, was a key factor in the American victory. This lesson would be carried forward into future conflicts, including the American Civil War, where artillery would continue to play a critical role on the battlefield. The Battle of Chapultepec was a decisive engagement in the Mexican-American War, and artillery played a crucial role in the American victory. The effective use of artillery by the American forces, both in the preparatory bombardment and during the assault, was instrumental in weakening the Mexican defenses and supporting the infantry advance. The Mexican artillery, while present, was unable to match the firepower and coordination of the American artillery, and its effectiveness was further limited by the American bombardment. The success of the American artillery at Chapultepec had significant tactical and strategic implications, contributing to the fall of Mexico City and the end of the war. The battle also highlighted the importance of artillery in modern warfare, a lesson that would be carried forward into future conflicts. The role of artillery in the Battle of Chapultepec is a testament to the power of well-coordinated and effectively employed artillery on the battlefield.